This started as a broken, abandoned RC car. No battery, no controller, and for almost 2 years, it just sat in a corner because I had no idea how to fix it. But after a few small experiments, it turned into something completely different. I replaced the original control board with a ESP32. I controlled the motor speed with PWM. I exposed the car's function through a WebSocket interface, and eventually I control it with a Nintendo controller. So this video isn't really a normal hardware tutorial about how to build a RC car. It's a story about a software engineer opening up a hardware black box, try to understand the old logic hidden inside the wires, and slowly turn it into a small robotic platform that I can control and expand. So 2 years ago, I was working with my daughter when we found this red RC car. At that time, she was really interested in cars. So when we saw it, I thought, this actually looks pretty cool. But it had a few obvious problems. The battery was missing, there was no controller, and I have no idea if the car itself still worked. We brought it home anyway. My daughter played with it for a few days, but because there was no remote, there wasn't much she could do with it. So eventually, like many toys, it just ended up sitting in a corner. I always had this small thought in my hand. Maybe one day I could open it. Maybe there was still something useful inside. Maybe it wasn't completely dead. But I never really touched it. Until recently, after playing with ESP32, small motors, sensors, and a few other hardware components, I started looking around the house for things I could experiment with. Then I saw this old car again and started wondering, can I bring this car back to life and make it move again? When I opened it, it looks like a mess. There were wires going everywhere. With my very limited hardware knowledge, I could recognize a motor at the back, a front steering mechanism, a few LEDs, and a speaker. But I didn't understand the original remote control circuit at all. After asking ChatGPT a few questions and tracing the wires myself, things started to become cleaner at a high level. Some wires went to a LED, some went to the speaker. Those parts were interesting, but they were not essential for movement. If I just want to bring the car back to life, I only need two things. The rear motor, which drives the car forward and backward, and the front end steering mechanism, which turns the wheels left and right. After tracing the wires one by one, the whole car became much simpler. What looked like a complex system becomes 4 important wires. 2 wires for the rear motor and 2 wires for the front steering. That was the first breakthrough. Once I found these 4 wires, I could test the car in the simplest possible way. I connected the rear motor directly to power just for a short moment. The wheels started spinning. Then I swapped the wires and the motor spun the opposite direction. That told me 2 things. The rear motor still worked, and I could control its direction by changing the power rate. The front end steering mechanism worked in a similar way. Power it one way and it turned left, swap the wire and it turned right. I only powered it briefly because this kind of steering mechanism is not designed to stay powered for too long. But that short test was enough. The car was no longer a mystery. It becomes 2 controllable outputs, the driver and the steering. At this point, I knew the physical chassis still worked. The wheels were there, the gears were there, the motor and the steering mechanism worked. The missing part was a brain. The original receiver board was the old brain. It listened to the original remote, then controlled the motor and the steering. But I didn't have the remote, and I didn't want to spend too much time reversing engineering the original radio board. So I decided to replace the old control system completely. I used a ESP32 Super Mini as the new controller, mainly because it has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth support built in. But the microcontroller cannot drive motors directly. A motor needs much more current than a tiny GPL pin can safely provide. So I added a motor driver. To simplify the design, The ESP32 acts as a brain. It decides what should happen. The motor driver handles the power for the motors, and the motors do the physical work. By separating those parts, I could keep the original physical chassis exactly as it was, and only replace the part I didn't understand with something I could control through code. So I bought the components, wired them up on the breadboard, and wrote a few lines of code. The first version wasn't fancy. I basically hardcoded a few movements directly into the loop. Move forward for 1 second, turn left for half a second, and then stop. It was very limited, but it helped me answer the most important question. Can my code actually control this physical machine? And when the car moved by itself for the first time, that was really exciting. It was not smooth or beautiful at all, but the old car was responding to a completely new brain. That was enough for the first step. After that, I wanted more control. If you connect a DC motor directly to power, your control module only has two status, on or off, full speed or full stop. That's fine for a simple toy, but it's not great if you want the car to feel smooth and responsive. To fix this, I need to use PWM or pulse-wise modulation. With PWM, the ESP32 turns the module power on and off thousands of times per second. By changing the duty cycle, which means how long the power stays on compared to off, I can control the average power the motor receives. In practice, that means throttle becomes a number. Instead of just on and off, I could use values like maybe 50% power for tight turn, maybe 75% for normal driving, or 100% for a straight line. This completely changed how the car felt. It stopped behaving like a normal toy and started to feel like a controllable system. For the original steering mechanism, PWM also helped soften the hard left or right turns, but it quickly showed a hardware limitation. It still could not hold a precise steering angle. If I want to feel precision, I knew I would eventually need to replace the front end steer with a proper servo. And now the wheels could spin and I could control the speed, but the car was still isolated. The commands only exist as hard-coded logic inside the firmware. I had a few functions ready to go, like moving forward, backward, left and right turns, and stop. That was useful for basic testing, but it's not enough for real-time driving. So the next question was, how can I separate the control logic from the code that actually runs the motors? Since the ESP32 has the built-in Wi-Fi, the easiest first step was setting up a network interface. At first, I tried a simple HTTP interface where I could send a post request to endpoints like forward or stop. That worked pretty well, but for live driving, HTTP feels disconnected. There was too much delay, and the normal request response mode is not good fit for continuous real-time control. So I changed the communication layer to WebSockets, and now the browser could open a persistent two-way connection to the ESP32 and stream throttle and steering update continuously with almost no noticeable delay. The UI I built was minimum: one slider for throttle, one slider for steering, and a big emergency button. But behind that simple interface, the flow was solid. The web app sends data, the ESP32 receives it and passes it, and the motor driver executes it. At that point, I was officially driving a broken toy from a browser. After playing with it on my phone for a little while, which was already very satisfying, I wanted to test how flexible this new design really was. I asked myself, since the system expects generic steering and throttle input, could I plug in a physical game controller? So I connected a Nintendo Switch controller. The controller already has a very natural input model. One analog joystick maps nicely to direction, and another maps nicely to throttle. And here was the most rewarding part of the design. I didn't need to rebuild or rewrite the card itself, because the system was already separate into layers. I only need to write a small translation layer in between. It captured the Nintendo controller input and send them into the existing WebSocket interface. The input device changed, but everything after that stays exactly the same. With the input layer feeling responsive, the original steering mechanism officially became the bottleneck. As I mentioned before, it wasn't a real servo, it's just a DC motor pushing against mechanic limits. And if I hold the turn for too long, it would heat up, draw too much current, and put the pressure onto the plastic gear. To fix this, I can replace the front end steering mechanism with a proper hobby servo. A servo changed the whole model. Instead of saying apply power to the left side and hope for the best, I could pass the exact value, like go to 70 degrees or go to 90 degrees for the center and so on. Now I was writing code for steering angles, not the steering force. To make this work easier, I built a small testing tool to check the servo limits before mounting it onto the chassis. It's a simple setup. I plug the servo into a separate breadboard with an adjustable knob and a tiny LED screen displaying the exactly duty cycle and the angle values. This allowed me to find the mechanic limits and the center point safely. So when I mounted the servo into the car body, I didn't have to guess and risk breaking the gears. This is honestly one of my favorite parts of the whole journey. The tool wasn't part of the final car, but it came naturally from a real problem. Instead of guessing and breaking things, I could isolate the problem, measure it, and verify the result. Once the original car was up and running smoothly, something interesting happened. I realized that I hadn't just repaired a single breaking car. I had created a reusable pattern. Power management, controller, motor driver, input translation from a web or a controller input. So I decided to test the pattern by applying it to another hardware. First, I built my own small custom car from scratch. The chassis was completely different. The wheels were different and the build was much simpler, but the control logic was almost the same. It worked beautifully on the very first try. Next, I bought a cheap toy car from Kmart and put it through the same conversion process. It has different bodies, different mechanical layout, and different scale. But I used the same ESP32 setup, reused the WebSocket logic, connected the same Nintendo controller, and upgraded it to servo steering. That was the moment the project stopped being just a one-off project. It becomes a small platform. The physical chassis could change, the input device could change, the steering hardware could change, but the core design stayed the same. Looking back, what made this project so satisfying wasn't one big dramatic breakthrough. It was the continuous sequence of small logic steps. At first, the car was just a dead black box with random wires. Then I mapped the basic input and outputs. Then I replaced the control system. Then I added the PWM for better control. Then I exposed the car through a clean interface. And when one part becomes the bottleneck, I replace it with a better pattern. Because I focused on building a clean pattern instead of just making a quick fix, I didn't just save a single toy from the landfill. I built a reusable blueprint. It started as a broken RC car, but by opening up the black box, understanding the system, and tracking control of the stack, it becomes a foundation of my own little robotic platform. If you have an old broken piece of technology sitting in a closet or in a garage, don't throw it out too quickly. You probably can open it up, figure out how it works, and see what you can build on top of it. Alright, that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.